It comes from Jason Leeson, please. Jason?
Yeah. On a scale of 1 to 10, how genuine is Jeremy Corbyn's newfound support of the EU?
Right. Daniel Hannan.
Oh, about 2. The guy has made a career out of not changing his mind, and now for political reasons he has to find a way of justifying switching to a pro-EU position. And let's just think through the logic of what he said today. What he said was, I'm in favour of the EU, but not this EU. I want a completely different one. Social Europe, one that has democracy and workers' rights and so on. Well, great, but that's not the one on the ballot paper. If the Prime Minister's renegotiation taught us one thing, it's how immune to reform, how intractable the European Union is. Its second largest net contributor was about to vote on whether to leave, and it couldn't bring itself to make any changes. So the idea that we're going to stick around and it will then suddenly reform, I mean, come on, we've had 40 years of Brussels becoming more remote, more corrupt, more undemocratic. What on earth in that record makes us think that if we stick with it a little bit longer, it'll suddenly become more congenial?
Okay. Owen Smith.
I'd say it was about a 7. I mean, Jeremy has in the past...
A 7 only?
I think it's about a 7. And I think it's a 7 because he reflects the country on this, Jeremy. He said today he's... You don't let me finish. He said today that he's made his mind up. And I think the country's making his mind up. That's the point I'm trying to get across, that Jeremy is someone who used to be opposed to the EU. Very clearly he voted against it in the 1970s. He was very clearly thought it was problematic when he was on the backbenches of the Labour Party. And in the last few years, and perhaps even in the last few weeks, he's come to a different view, and a view which is now, I think, united with the Labour movement. We now feel collectively that we should stay in the European Union. And the reason he's come to that view, perhaps it's not, you know, a 10, but the reason he's come to that 7 is he thinks that the jobs that we need in this country, the security we need in this country, the challenges to be met by this country, whether that's tax avoidance or security for people, are best met by our sticking together. That's at the heart of the Labour Party's core beliefs, that we are always stronger when we stick together. And that's why he has come, perhaps, on a journey. And I think a lot of people in this country are going on that journey too, and I hope they'll get to the same place.
What's curious is when he was running for the leadership and he was asked whether he'd vote to leave, he said, I wouldn't rule it out, voting to leave. So I wonder whether it was Cameron's success in negotiating that finally persuaded him.
I don't think David Cameron persuades Jeremy Corbyn very much. He certainly doesn't persuade me.
But nothing else has changed. Nothing else has changed in the year since he said he'd think of voting out.
I genuinely think, Jeremy, and I've talked about this with him on several occasions over the last few weeks, I genuinely think he, like many of us in the country, has thought hard about whether he thinks we should be in or out, and he's decided on balance we should be in. And I think that's a reasonable, sensible view to him to come to, and I think lots of people will make exactly the same journey.
And you said 7 out of 10 for genuineness. Do you think you might up it to 10 out of 10 by the 23rd of June?
Well, with a bit of luck. He's got a few more speeches to give.
And a few more corners to turn. Jenny